So tonight's movie was a film called Gretel and Hansel, which is kind of a different take on the classic fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. If you don't know the story of Hansel and Gretel, basically two kids wander in the woods, end up finding this house made of food, and end up going inside and then inevitably being attacked by a witch who owns the house, and then having to escape from said witch. This movie goes in a little bit different direction. So right off the bat, something that really bothered me was that it's called Gretel and Hansel. Why? You want a jelly and peanut butter sandwich? Maybe a banana and strawberry smoothie? That's kind of what I was getting from it. But they did that intentionally, which I learned after watching the film, because the film is more centered around Gretel. She, in this version, is kind of the older sister, and Hansel is her younger brother. And to start the film off, they're basically just being kicked out of their house because their parents can't, or their mom can't afford to feed them anymore. And so she sends them out, and basically they got to figure out how to survive. As they're kind of journeying to this area where I think they're going to go try to find work and like room and board and stuff like that, they come across this weird castle looking thingy, and they sneak inside and try to sleep in it. And this like ghoul creature thing tries to attack them. And as they're fleeing from it, some guy shoots an arrow through its head and kills it, and then offers them a place to sleep and something to eat for the night. Tells them of a town that's a couple days walk away where they might have luck trying to find a place. So as they're going on this trip, Gretel is seeing these weird like figures in the woods. They remind me of like the crones from I don't know what kind of mythology, but they're basically just like witches or bog hags and stuff like that. Just these weird figures. And the kids end up getting really hungry, and they stumble across some mushrooms. And Gretel asks the mushrooms, are they okay to eat? Like, she like talks to the mushrooms. So, it kind of alludes to that she's got something a little bit extra that everyone doesn't have. Like the ability to communicate with things, or there's something different about her. And then the kids end up just tripping balls of mushrooms, which I thought was kind of funny. Because, yeah, they're just laughing their butts off, and then there's just, like, the weird, like, zoning out, like, echoey sounds and stuff like that. And then they end up coming across this house, and it's a normal house. It's not made of food or anything like that, which is a typical story of Hansel and Gretel. But they look inside one of the windows and see that there's just this huge feast prepared. And so Hansel ends up sneaking in, and this figure just kind of swooshes and takes him. And then Gretel starts freaking out and trying to find a way to break in, and the door ends up opening, and an old lady walks out with Hansel and basically says, "Oh, you must be Gretel that Hansel's told me so much about. Come on in." And so they end up going in, and they're offered food, and basically the old lady says that you can stay with me if you help out around the place, or they offer to help out around the place for a place to stay. So they start doing all these random tasks. Gretel's doing a lot of the typical womanly duties of the time of like caring for the house, cleaning, dusting, while Hansel goes out and tries to learn how to chop wood. Even though he's a little kid, that's kind of what he wants to offer to do. And the old lady, she's got kind of like a glaucoma eye thing going on in her fingertips. All of her fingers, just the tips of them, are all black. And knowing this story, I know that she's a witch. The beginning of the movie kind of alludes to that she was sick, and so her parents took her to this entity thing to have them remove the sickness from her. And once that happened, she still had some special abilities left over, so she had foresight, so she could kind of see people's futures and tell them what was going to happen. And it just became too much, and so basically her parents sent her away. Like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. So they sent her in the woods, and now she lives in the woods. So as the story starts unfolding, you kind of always just have in the back of your mind, like, okay, like this lady's going to try to eat these kids at some point. But it doesn't really play out that way. And kind of moving into a little bit more spoiler zone. basically you kind of start figuring out that Gretel has these mystic abilities that resemble that of like what the witch is, and the witch keeps giving her, or the old lady keeps giving her these little weird concoctions to drink every night, and they kind of induce these crazy dreams where Gretel can see things for what they actually are, versus what they are led to be. So she starts seeing like the background of the old lady witch, and how she's able to create these huge meals with like no supplies. She never goes and leaves to get supplies. And a kind of weird, cool thing that I thought was like one scene, you basically see how the witch gets down into the basement cellar thing and concocts this meal out of, she just has like this bucket of just guts and like livers and stomachs and stuff like that, and just pours it on the table, and then takes like this weird like baby arm thing out of a bucket and sets it on it, and then does like this like witch power and turns it just from this just gruel of guts and gore into like this super fancy banquet meal. So you start learning a little bit more about what's going on, and then you learn more backstory of the main witch, where she was actually the mother of the child in the beginning of the movie who you thought was who the witch is now. And that in order for her to kind of unlock her true potential, she had to eat her kids, which were her weakness effectively. And so now she's trying to poise Gretel with destroying her weakness to unlock her full potential by eating Hansel. And Gretel inevitably overpowers the witch, kills her by using basically telekinetic powers, if you will, to spike her to a wall and kill her by getting her burnt, which is like pretty much following kind of the base story of Hansel and Gretel, where they burn the witch and then they survive. They do a really good job at keeping that fairy tale vibe throughout the whole film. And some of the camera angles where like the camera would lock to the person and move with them, so their face never actually moved, but the background did, and it just some kind of cool shots, I thought. I like the different take on the story. It's not just a typical story, or even like they did like a witch hunter movie a little while ago, which I actually kind of enjoyed. But it was cool to see something different change with the story, and it wasn't a bad way to do the story, but it just was very slow burning, to the point where I almost fell asleep, honestly. My wife watched this one with me, and she agreed. We just didn't think this was a solid film. So, on the scale, I'm gonna throw this one, because I enjoyed the cinematography aspect of it, and I like that it's a different story than what I've normally seen. I'm gonna give this one a 4. And I know that's not a lot, and some people are gonna disagree with me, but it just wasn't that great of a film. And it's one of those ones that like maybe I'd watch again to see if maybe I had a different take on it after watching it again and kind of knowing what's going on a little bit more. I wasn't feeling this one. So again, it was Gretel and Hansel. I don't believe it's on any streaming services. I had to rent the film. It's a no for me, dog. And I think that's basically gonna do it for this film.